Paris has hosted the Olympics multiple times before, in fact, well before the 2024 Summer Olympics. But let's just say it has not always gone well. Today, let's break down why the 1900 Olympics in Paris were absolutely bananas, or as they say in French, banane. Number 10, it lasted more than 5 months. Most people recognize that the present-day Olympic Games take a couple of weeks from start to finish, give or take. And considering how many athletes and events are hosted, it's actually a pretty remarkable feat to have that all condensed into such a short period of time. But the 1900 Olympics in Paris do not care about your timelines of a couple weeks, because they decided that something closer to half a year made more sense. The Games are considered to have started on May 14th and didn't conclude until October 28th, which is about 5.5 months from start to finish, which is wild. That's like a hockey season. This was partly to align with the World's Fair, which was happening at the same time in Paris, but that's still an absolutely crazy timeline. Number 9, there were no opening or closing ceremonies. The opening and closing ceremonies of the Olympics are some of the most interesting parts, if we're being honest with ourselves. The lighting of the torch, the entry of the athletes, the opportunity for the host country to show off a bit, it's all good family fun entertainment. So it seems weird to us today to think that those would just be omitted from the schedule, but the 1900 Olympics did just that. No need for the bookends of ceremonies, just pure, raw athletics, or something like that. Again, this was partly due to the World's Fair happening at the same time. After all, that is pretty loaded with ceremonies as well as non-athletic stuff for people to see and do, I guess. But with the benefit of hindsight, it meant that there was no official beginning and official end to the Games, at least as we think of it today. But to say this was the only administrative oversight would be just wrong. More on that to come. Number 8, some athletes didn't even know they were in the Olympics. Can you even picture someone competing in the Olympics but not being aware they competed in the Olympics? It seems impossible, right? But it happened, and it actually happened a lot in Paris in 1900. This has been and will continue to be a theme of this video, but the organization and promotion of these Olympics was brutal. I mean historically bad. So much so that many of the athletes didn't even realize that their particular event was part of the Olympic Games. They thought it was just some competition, perhaps even part of the concurrent World's Fair we talked about. This included some winners of gold medals in the events. They didn't even realize they had won Olympic gold medals. That's how bad it was. In researching this video, I came across some absolutely incredible facts, some of which are still to come, but this one literally had me laughing out loud. Amazing. Hey folks, just a quick pause here from the Olympic insanity to ask a small favor. If you're enjoying the video, I'd love it if you consider subscribing to the channel. I'm posting 3 videos per week and I'd love for you to come along for the ride. So if you're down for some fun, please click subscribe. All right, let's go back to Paris. Number 7, the first female Olympic champion was crowned. The answer is Hélène Duportale. The question is, what was the name of the first female Olympic gold medalist? There you go. She was born in the US, competed for Switzerland, but she was a champion in Paris. At the first modern Olympic Games in 1896 in Athens, there were no female Olympic gold medalists. And that's because there were no female Olympians, at all. 1900 was the first time they were allowed to compete in any event, so this was their first chance to shine. And Hélène shone indeed. She won a gold medal in sailing as part of the Swiss team in a sailing event. 2 months later, remember, that's still the same Olympics in this case, Charlotte Cooper of the UK won the first individual gold medal by a female in tennis. Fun fact, she would also win the doubles gold medal in tennis this same year. Cool! Number 6, competing on Sundays brought protests. So this is a bit of a weird one, that's for sure, but apparently competing on Sundays was a big deal at these Olympics. The story goes like this. Events were held throughout the week, just as they are in the Olympics today. And the week, as many of you are no doubt aware, includes Sundays. And for many Christian athletes, this was a day of rest as part of their faith, which makes sense, I guess. Since several events and competitions were held on Sundays, any conflicted athletes were expected to withdraw from the event if they chose not to compete on Sundays. But naturally, the athletes didn't know their events were scheduled on Sunday until they, already traveled all the way to the Olympics. This led to a bunch of protests by American athletes especially. Many athletes, though, ended up competing regardless. So strange. Number 5, most of the winners didn't actually get medals. At this point, this probably doesn't surprise you, given how ridiculous these Olympic Games were, but indeed it is true, the vast majority of the winners didn't get gold medals. Instead, they were typically given cups or trophies, so yes, they at least got something, but it just seems weird in this day and age. Olympics and medals go together like, well, the Olympics and medals. But this wasn't exactly weird at the time. In fact, they had a whole different prize system at the time. At the previous Olympic Games in 1896 in Athens, the very first modern Olympic Games, only 2 medals were given out in each event. And those 2 medals, the winner got a silver medal and the second place finisher got the bronze medal. The traditional gold for first, silver for second, and bronze for third didn't actually kick in until the 1904 Games in St. Louis. By the way, I did a whole other video on those 1904 Games in St. Louis. Check it out when you have a moment because it makes the 1900 Games in Paris look amazing by comparison. Number 4, money was awarded for winning. Many countries in the world today offer athletes money as a bonus or incentive for winning medals, but that is entirely separate from the Olympic Games and the International Olympic Committee. In this case, I'm talking about the actual Olympics people handing out money to winners. Take the equestrian events, for example, because why not? Who doesn't love horses? Winners in the 1900 Olympic Games in Paris in equestrian were given a cash prize between 4,000 to 6,000 French francs. That, or they may have received artwork for winning. I'm not joking. Artwork was a prize in the equestrian event. Similarly, Albert Robert Ayat of France won the top prize in fencing, and he received 3,000 French francs for his efforts. Not gonna lie, this feels weird to me. Not that they handed out money for winning, that I get, but the fact that the horses got paid more for their performance than the humans, that's the weird bit. Number 3, there were some really weird events. There have been many Olympic events over the years, some stranger than others. I've actually done a few videos on the topic of events in the Olympics, good and bad, because it's fascinating to be honest. Paris in 1900 was one of the strangest though, as there were many events that made their first, last, and only appearance at these games. Let's begin with angling. Yep, angling, as in fishing. That was a medal event in Paris. So too was motor racing, live pigeon shooting, underwater swimming, croquet, and a 200-meter swimming obstacle course. Wow, now that would be an interesting pentathlon, wouldn't it? Also, for all you hot air balloon enthusiasts out there, ballooning was an Olympic event in Paris in 1900. Henri de la Volpe set both distance and duration world records during this event, traveling 1,925 kilometers over nearly 36 hours. That took him from France all the way to modern-day Ukraine. Unreal. Number 2, it was basically only French athletes. I did a video on the 1904 Olympics in St. Louis as mentioned. They were wild, and one of the reasons why was because basically no one other than the Americans participated. Well, that actually had a bit of precedent as the 1900 Games in Paris provided basically the same setup, but for the French this time. Around 72% of all the athletes in the games were from France. Yeah, 72%, 720 out of 997 athletes approximately. And I say approximately because the record keeping and documentation was garbage during these Olympics, so we don't really know for sure. Remember, a lot of these guys didn't even know they were in the Olympics, so a good hard count is tough to come by. And this probably won't surprise you, but France won the most medals out of any country, bringing home 102 in total. In second was the US with 48, and Great Britain was in third with 32. But for real, I figured France would have gotten way more than that, considering they were 72% of the athletes. This was the only time in history France has ever won the most medals by any country at an Olympics. Number 1, the unknown champion. This one had to go at number 1, which is really saying something for a video that contains the previous 9 curiosities. But this one comes straight from the International Olympic Committee themselves, and the story goes like this. It's August 26, 1900, and it's time for a rowing event. A Dutch team suddenly needed a replacement athlete, specifically a coxswain. For those that don't know rowing, this is the person that doesn't row, but sits at the end of the boat facing forward and does a little bit of steering. So what did the Dutch team do? Well, they grabbed a random French boy and threw him in there. And because it's the 1900 Olympics in Paris and it's super weird, they of course won. This French boy then joined the celebration. He got his picture taken as part of the winning team. He was even in the victory ceremony. And then he completely disappeared. Poof. Decades of research have failed to turn up the boy's name, his age, or what happened to him after his gold medal winning performance. But the best guess is that he was a boy anywhere between 7 to 12 years old, which would make him the youngest Olympic champion of all time. Incredible. And that is our list for today. Wow, Paris, 1900, what a time. Hopefully the 2024 games in Paris end up being a little less dramatic. Or would it be better if it was more dramatic? Man, hard to say. Let me know what you thought of today's video in the comments below. Otherwise, I will see you all again soon.